So I want to make sure that you're fully prepared to write your final paper for 201. And one of the things that we're going to note is APA style and form. Now, we already had a lecture on APA style, but I'm going to apply those things. Now, if you go to your course documents section of Blackboard, you will see that there is something that is called 201 Paper Template 2021. Now, very important that you use this template because I remade the template to be in the latest style of APA format. So if you follow this approach, you should be fine, right? You should be able to, why is this not full screen? You should be able to get everything correct. Now, when we went over our lecture on APA style, I mentioned that in the latest version of APA format, you do not have the words running head. Do you see at the top left here, the words running head is gone, right? All you have is the header itself, which is an abbreviated version of your title, right? Now, this should be no more than 40 characters long, and you should have your page number on every page. This was a simplification because it used to be that you would have the words running head on the first page and have to have a different first page relative to every subsequent page. Simplified. So you're going to have your header here. Notice the actual header, it's all caps, right? So every letter should be capitalized. You have your page number, which is right aligned. Then you're going to, in the body of the paper, you're going to go down five. You're going to hit enter 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your everything is double spaced. Your full title, notice your full title is bold and center aligned. Now, that is the model for a level 1 heading. It is bolded, it is center aligned, and all of the major words, the first letter is capitalized. So if you look at towards a better understanding of generalized anxiety disorder, a biopsychosocial approach, the T of towards is capitalized. The B of better is capitalized. A is not, right? It's a connector word. U of understanding is capitalized. The O of is not capitalized, and so forth. Your full title should be 12 words or fewer. As we mentioned in lecture 2, you will have your name and you'll have your affiliation. So you'll notice it has my name, no degrees. You don't have to do Daniel Kaplan, PhD, or anything like that. So for you, if you have an associate's degree or anything else, it doesn't matter. Just your name and then your affiliation. So the College of Staten Island and City University of New York. That's your first page. Done. Page 2. Notice you have the same header, right? Notice page 2 is your abstract page. The word abstract is going to be center line and bolded. It is a level 1 heading. Not to mention, the abstract goes on its own page. So the title page is its own page. The abstract is its own page. Now you wrote your abstract, so you already know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a relative brief summary between 150 to 250 words describing what your paper is about, right? So because you're meant to pick a psychological disorder and break it down from a biological, a psychological, and a social environmental level, you're going to be presenting some of your highlights. You're going to talk about some of this. You're going to capture the main themes, anything that seems pretty significant, you want to put there. And then you're going to finish off with keywords. You don't need to change the formatting at all on this document. So your keywords is italicized in colon, and then your actual keywords, you put them there, separated by a comma, or if you separate it by a semicolon, that's fine. But understand, if you have words, if you're describing a concept and it's multiple words, it still counts as one keyword, as is the case with generalized anxiety disorder. That is one keyword. It's 3 actual words, but it's the topic of study, so it's one keyword. Poor coping strategies. 3 words, but it's still one keyword. Now, what are the keywords? The keywords are, you're giving the publisher search terms. They're almost like hashtags, right? So if you use a hashtag, it helps you find whatever content uses that hashtag. So the keywords in a scientific article operate very similarly. So you're tagging these words. So if anyone puts in a search engine, EBSCOhost or anything else for that matter, these words would be tagged and your article would come up. So make sure that your actual abstract is 150 to 250 words. Make sure you have a keyword section that has a minimum of 6 keywords. Sorry, my cat's trying to bother us. All right, so 6 keywords or phrases. That's your abstract page. Before I go any further, is there any question on the title page or the abstract page?
Professor, how long did you say the abstract has to be once again?
Okay, so the abstract has to be 150 to 250 words long, right? So I actually count the number of words you have. So it actually has to be in this range. So that's that. Ali.
Are we not using the abstract that we wrote before, or do we have to write a new one?
Your abstract, if it's good, you can keep it. If you changed articles, I know some people ask me, hey, can I change an article? If that article is not in your paper anymore, you might have to change your abstract. If there are problems with your abstract, you might have to change it. If there are problems with your keywords, you might have to change it. But for many of you, it's a good question, because if your abstract is really good, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to rewrite it. I'm just showing you page by page what you need for your final paper. So you may recall this AP writing is in 3 sections. First, we did our title page and references. Then we did our title page, abstract, and references. And next week, you are required to submit your full paper, right, by class time. So that's why I'm going over this one more time to make sure that it's clear. Even if you didn't submit your APA Writing 2 assignment, you still have the roadmap, right? Because some people didn't submit their abstracts at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Title page, abstract, anything of that nature? All right. So the actual paper, right? You will have 5 scientific sources, peer-reviewed sources, within the last 10 years, wrapped into the body of the paper. So page 3 starts your actual paper. And you are required to have an introductory section, right? So this is your rubric. I recommend a couple paragraphs trying to set the stage for what the disorder is that you're trying to study. So I've seen people use the DSM and explain what the disorder is and what the symptoms or criteria for diagnosis are. Um, and then you're going to tell the reader what you're going to do, which is basically you are identifying 5 factors that are associated with the disorder. They have to be biological influences, psychological influences, or social or environmental influences. I see that there's something in the chat. Um, Hopefully within the next day or two. So there was a question about AP writing 2. So hopefully within the next day or two, you will get that back. Um, so yeah, that would be that. So you're going to have introductory paragraphs setting the stage for your disorder. Tell me what the disorder you're looking at is, what the criteria are, and then you're going to explain what you're going to cover in the subsections very briefly. Right. So generally in papers, you tell people what they're going to experience, you give them what you promised, and then you write a summary telling them what they've been exposed to. Right. So the first factor were your biological influences. Right. So I arbitrarily picked generalized anxiety disorder. Right. But you may have 1 to 3 articles focused on the biological influence of generalized anxiety disorder. So you might talk about this could be brain structures, brain pathways, neurochemistry. This could be genetics and so forth. Anything you want to address as a biological influence on whatever the disorder you're writing it is, right? And you'll review that article. You'll write a summary of what that article was about. You'll talk about, in general, what their research questions were, what their design was, what they found was, and the relevancy to your disorder. And I think that's important that I'm looking for those things. What what their research questions were, what their designs were, what their findings were, relevancy to your topic, right? So every article has to have all 4 of those elements, right? Now, you may only have one article on biological influences, right? I said, as long as you have 5 articles, you can break it up any way you want. You could have 1 to 3 on biology. Then the psychological influences, right? Again, these are internal factors like coping, stress, resiliency, you know, attention. These are internal factors, right? That play a role in whatever your disorder is. So you're going to have 1 to 3 articles on psychological influences, right? Again, I don't know which one's going to be more evenly developed than the other. And then social or emotional influences, it's the same thing. But you'll notice that your full title is a level 1 heading, center line bold, major words are the first letters capitalized. But then when you subdivide the paper, you're using a level 2 heading, as we reviewed in AP style. It's left aligned, bolded, and the first letter of each major word is capitalized, right? So all 3 of those, and then you have your conclusion, which restates the main points of the article and your take-home messages. I see I have something in the chat. You have a question that says, so we go into detail about each article and what it found about the influences. Well, each article should reflect an influence, not what it found about the influences, but you're saying, according to so and so, they were investigating the relationship between serotonin and anxiety using 231 participants. they took blood draws of serotonin serum levels. They found that individuals with anxiety tend to have under low levels of serotonin. Therefore, they recommended pharmacological treatments that increase serotonin in the blood. That would be an example. Does that make sense, Nicolette? Okay, so that's kind of how you would do it. So you would go through what they found and report their findings, and then at the end, you would say some kind of application to what that serotonin or low levels of serotonin did for generalized anxiety disorder. So it has to be connected to your disorder. Okay. And that's for all of your articles. Again, I'm reiterating what I want. Each article has to be within the last 10 years, has to be peer reviewed. So it has to be a scientific source. It cannot be a book. It cannot be a news article. It has to be a individual article submitted to a journal that has peer review. That's what I'm looking for. Now, you'll notice when we finish with our paper, right? We have our level 1 heading, level 2, we finish our conclusion, we start a new page for our references. So the references go on a new page. You write the word references. It is center aligned and bolded. It is a level 1 heading. The actual articles are reported in alphabetical order by the first author's last name. So I gave 2 sources just for the hell of it, right? So Headley and Young, and then Kaplan. Now, I intentionally didn't actually give you a reference, but I gave you what you would have to put there. But the H of Headley comes before the K of Kaplan, right? So the Headley source would be before mine, right? So in this context, you would have what's called a hanging indent, right? So the first line is left aligned, and then every subsequent line is indented. You do not need to do this manually. You can go into what's called format paragraph. When you select that, I don't know, can you see the pop out that came up or no? Where after I did format paragraph, did you see the pop-up screen?
Yes.
So within there, you can do special and click hanging. That'll allow you to do your hanging indent without having to manually do it. So I've seen people say, oh, I had to enter tab, and then when they upload it, something gets shifted in their format. You won't have that problem if you use a proper hanging indent using Microsoft Word. Okay, so, but let's go back to it when we look at it. Each article has to have the author's last name, first name. If they have a middle initial, it would go after the, first name's an initial, middle initial, and then every subsequent author, the same thing. Before the last author, we have the ampersand, right? That has to be there. You do not write the words AND in the references. You do not write the full name of the person, their first or middle name. After the author's names, you have the year of publication. Now, for our purposes, this publication would be too old, right? It's more than 10 years old, so we wouldn't be able to use this in principle. But so then we have our actual title, right? So this is the title of the article: Social Comparison Processes and Depressive Symptoms in Children and Adolescents with Asperger's Syndrome. Notice when we're talking about the title of the article, only the first word is capitalized. It's treated like a regular sentence. with the exception of proper nouns, abbreviations, and the first word after a colon. Now, so why is Asperger capitalized? Well, that's a proper noun. That's a person's name, right? Even though it's a syndrome, it was named after a person, so the A of Asperger is capitalized. Then we have the journal it was published in, right? So the journal it was published in, it was just titled Autism. So that journal is italicized, and the first letter of each major word is capitalized. Now, it's pretty easy for this one because it only has one word. So the A of autism is capitalized. Then we have the volume and the issue. The volume number is 10. The issue number is 2. The volume is italicized. The issue number is regular font in parentheses. And then the page numbers, 139 through 153. Do not write P, do not write PP, right? It is just the actual page numbers. And then the DOI. Notice it's a hyperlink, but if you put a hyperlink, it naturally underlines it and turns it blue. APA style, we don't want it underlined or blue. We just want the web. So you have to right click. So let's say if I were to highlight this, I would right click and then say hyperlink. And then you could click remove if there was, right? In this case, because I already removed it, it's not there. But you can certainly click remove hyperlink, and that'll remove the blue and the underline. All right. Now, the second source I put out here was, again, a model of one author, but instead of actually using this example, I told you what you're going to do. So, title of the article. Notice how it's written with the T of title capitalized and nothing else capitalized. The name of the journal was published in, notice it was italicized, right? And all the major words are capitalized. So when we looked at the word autism, it was one word. So you capitalize the A, but in here I said the N of name, J of journal, A of article, and P of publish are all capitalized because they're major words. Now, obviously, you're going to put the real name of the journal. And then you're going to have your volume, your issue, your page number, and your DOI, right? So I had to make things up because this is a shell. This is your paper, right? I expect a minimum of 3 pages of content in the body. So your paper as a whole should be a minimum of 6 pages long, right? So your title page is page 1. Your abstract page is page 2. Your body is a minimum of 3 pages. So it's 3, 4, 5. It can go up to 5 pages if you want. And then your references would be on its own page afterwards. That is your full paper. Now, let's say I wanted to do an in-text citation, right? So now I'm going to take Kaplan 2017, right? So I'm making it up. If I wanted to make this a citation here, I might do Kaplan 2017. Now, that is a parenthetical citation. Notice the citation goes before the period, right? So I open parenthesis, Kaplan, last name, year. Now, if I wanted to use the other one, let's say I had Headley and Young. Let's go here. Headley and Young. I'm not sure if that was how I spelled their names. No, Hedley. All right, I just want, you have to match it, right? Headley, and Young, right? So it's an ampersand Young, and the year was 2006, right? So that would be parenthetical citation. Now, let's say I had 3 or more authors. that 3 or more authors were bound by the et al. Rule. Now, I don't have a reference here, but I'll make it up. So let's say I wanted to do 3 or more authors. It would be Smith et al. 2024. I'm making up an author, but you would actually have yours. But notice when we use et al., it's for 3 or more authors. You have the first author's name, space, et, space, al, period, comma, year. That's how your in-text citation should look. Now, if you use a signal phrase, you may remember a signal phrase instead of the author's name being in parenthesis, it's part of the sentence, right? You might say, according to Kaplan to 2017. I'm making it up, right? So notice how if you write it as part of the sentence, the name of the author is outside of parenthesis, the year is inside parenthesis, and it's part of the sentence. That's in-text citations in a nutshell. Do I have any questions about formatting or how this would look? Ali?
I just have a question about the citations because in one of my other classes I had an APA paper and unless it was a like direct quote, if we're paraphrasing, my professor told me to put the citation at the end of the paragraph, not the sentence.
Well, your professor was being more limiting than APA style allows. It is not true that it has to be a direct quote or a paraphrase. You can use a signal phrase, whether it's a direct quote or when you paraphrase. So you do not have to have it just in parentheses at the end of a sentence. So they might have had the reason for doing that, but that is not APA style. All right.
So we would like even if we're paraphrasing, we'd put it after the sentence still. Like
Yeah. Yes. No
okay.
matter what, that brings up another question. You are not allowed to use direct quotes at all in this paper. Remember, I said that when I went over APA style, they said you can only use quotes sparingly. But because this is such a small paper, I'm requiring you to put it in your own words, what that person said. So that means I'm requiring you to paraphrase. And even after you paraphrase, you still have to have in-text citations. You still have to cite your source. So according to so-and-so, you will review articles that justify biological influence on GAD. When you paraphrase, it still does not have to be just a citation at the end of the sentence. That is wrong. You are allowed to use a signal phrase. And if you go back to the APA style lecture I gave you, I think it was the 3rd week of our semester, I went over APA style and I spent about an hour showing you all the different ways to cite inside the text. And it is not just parenthetical citations. So I'm glad you did not mention the professor by name, but they are not giving you a full picture of APA style. That is not correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. So to be clear, there will be no quotes, no direct quotes in this paper, which means you have to put the content in your own words. But even when you put it in your own words, you still have to have in-text citations. You still have to cite where you got that information from. Where I am reacting to what Ali asked was it does not matter whether you use it as a signal phrase or a parenthetical citation. Both are acceptable according to APA style. So if you want to use according to Kaplan as part of the sentence or Kaplan 2017 as a parenthetical citation, either one is fine. Any other questions? Because this is pretty much, I mean, I've given it to you in pieces. I've given you how the AP style lecture, how to format a title page, how to format a reference page, how to format uh, an abstract, and now I'm going over every aspect of your paper and what I'm looking for. So the final paper, I'm going to recap, I'm going to say it one more time. Final paper, title page, own page, abstract, own page. The body of the paper, 3 to 5 pages. Reference or references on its own page. In the body of the paper, you have to paraphrase, no direct quotes. You have to put it in your own words, but you still have to cite your sources. There have to be a minimum of 5 scientific sources or journals within the last 10 years. Now, notice I said 1 to 3 articles. I don't care if you do 131, 221, 113, however you want to focus on biological, psychological, social, emotional factors, doesn't matter to me. You can pick your articles as you see fit, but there's a minimum of 5 scientific sources requiring peer review within the last 10 years. I will expect in-text citations of all 5 of them. And then I will match it against your references. In the references, you have to have all of your sources that are cited within the body of the paper. And I'm going to match 1-to-1. I said a minimum of 5 sources. That does not mean you can't have more. So let's say you wanted to be more balanced and have 2 biological influence articles, 2 psychological, 2 social, emotional. That's fine. You could do 2-2-2. It's 1 additional scientific article, but you could break it down any way you want. Let's say you wanted to, in the introductory paragraph, use the DSM-5. Well, the DSM-5 is a textbook. It is not a scientific journal. You can use it, but it wouldn't count towards one of your 5 scientific sources, if that makes sense. So you have to have a minimum of 5 journals, and then beyond that, you could add other things if you want. So I think I've summarized all of the expectations, everything I'm looking for, and I think I've drawn attention to the rubric and even the template that you have to just fill in the gaps. Any other questions, Teresa?
So the paper is due next Sunday.
Next Sunday at class time.
So before the class.
Before the
Okay.
class, yes. This one will be due right at the beginning of class. And obviously your final will be during class time.
So we have one more exam next class, and this is our like last lecture.
This is your last formal lecture.
Okay, thank you.
Now, you're welcome. Now, if you have 3 grades that you are satisfied with, remember I said you can skip the final. I know there are some people who have A's, so taking the final will not help their grade. But there are other people who need to take the final, right? So the next class will only be your final exam. All right. Any other questions? Ali?
Oh, I was just wondering on the assignment for the final paper, if you I don't know if you have it set up like that, but every time I like press it when it like I click view it, it just brings me back to the original Blackboard page.
So I will have to delete that and re-upload because when you do course copy, it gives a broken link, unfortunately. So I had that with my other class as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
I will create a submission page for that.
Okay, thank you.
You got it? Any other questions? All right, so that's the paper. So let me stop the share and stop the recording. and then we'll talk general way forward. All right, stop recording.